I wrote a little poem to start, just to kind of get our minds wrapped around this evening. As we gather here to remember David dearly, thinking about the life he had, all the good and the sad, let's dwell more on the good and let it be understood that in the end, as life goes on, when we hear life's final song, that the love we share, the comfort, the care, are the one true thing, the medicine for the sane, the salve that will bring beauty from ashes. As Bobby said, my name is Mark, I'm David's brother. On behalf of my family, let me just say thank you for being here, and specifically to Maria and Bobby and Caroline for putting this on. I know that most of you are friends or knew David through work. So I would love to share with you more about David's life and my 40 years of knowledge. David was born in Indiana, where my parents grew up, and when my mom was pregnant with me, they moved to Northern California. We moved to the heart of gold country in the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas. And for the first 10 or 11 years of our life, David and I shared a bedroom with a bunk bed. Now, I don't know if any of you have brothers or sisters and have had to share a bedroom with a bunk bed. But when you put two boys in a bedroom together, things happen. In essence, as a parent, you've given your kids a fort to sleep in. And I remember one incident very specifically. I'm pretty sure that my brother and I were in trouble for something, or my mom just needed a break from us. Either way, we were sequestered to our bedroom. Now, I had the top bunk of the bed, which in hindsight, to me, didn't make much sense because I was much younger and smaller. But David and I had decided to make the most of our time. And so we did what boys do. We tested our manhood. We decided to start jumping off the top of the bunk bed onto all of our pillows and blankets, which is super fun, by the way. You can still do that, even as an adult. I'm just throwing it out there. Now, if you have small kids, you know that fun and games like this always escalate. So after I was all jumped out, I decided just to lay on the floor in the blankets, totally content. David proceeded to climb back up to my bed to jump. He looked down at me and said, "Mark, don't move." And I said, "No way, you are gonna jump on me." We argued intensely over this because I knew that he was gonna jump on top of me. I bet you're never gonna guess what happened. So David said, "Here I go," and he jumped. And my lack of trust in my pre-adolescent brother caused me to move to my left, directly into his landing zone, which hurt, by the way. Crying and screaming ensued, and my mom came running into the room to discover what was causing such a ruckus. Imagine this scene in your mind. 8-year-old me on the floor crying, 10-year-old David unscathed sitting on his bed, and my mom standing in the doorway questioning what happened. Through sobbing gasps, I exclaimed, "He jumped on me." David, in a calm, clear voice, he moved into my landing zone. My mom stopped jumping off the bed. End of story. It was in that moment, looking back, that I can see that David was destined to be a lawyer. The more you get to hang around David, you find out that he had a sneaky sense of humor, in case you didn't know. Years later, we moved from Northern California to Orange County during our high school and college years, and one of these special occasions played out. I should also mention that David loved to watch movies. Actually, I think our entire family loves to watch movies. So in this instance, my family had rented M. Night Shyamalan's movie, The Sixth Sense, and the only person who had seen it was David, because he was attending UCLA and went to saw it in a theater. He was visiting for the weekend, and we rented a copy from Blockbuster. And I don't know if there's too many young people in here, but Blockbuster is streaming service before there was streaming service. So David had let us know that he had already seen the movie, so he bowed out from watching it, which we understood. And so I watched the movie with my mom, my youngest sister Bethany, both of whom couldn't attend today, and me. At that time in my life, I didn't overly enjoy suspenseful thriller movies as much as I do now. So when the movie was over, it was very late at night. I can honestly say that my sister and I were completely freaked out. So it was bedtime. We headed upstairs to our bedrooms to go to sleep. I'm walking towards the bathroom and I hear a noise coming from there. I asked my mom and my sister if they had heard the sound. And my mom said, "Oh, you're just imagining things, it's late." Then I heard it again. Once again, I didn't hear anything, imagining things. I wear contacts, and so I needed to take them out and get ready for bed, so I opened the door. As soon as I opened the door fully and flipped the light on, my brother sprang towards me from behind the shower curtain. And instantly, I sprang backwards about 6 feet into a wall and crumbled into a ball, heaping, shaking. My sister Bethany had the opposite reaction and gave David the verbal lashing of a lifetime. She said cuss words that no one had ever heard before or possibly will ever hear again. Meanwhile, my brother is rolling laughing on the floor. It's just one thing. It's one thing I'll really miss about David, is his laugh. His true laugh when he thought something was hilarious. This mixture of gasping for breath while laughing so deep. I have one very specific laughing memory of David. We were headed home from a family vacation, and if memory serves me right, our car had just gotten broke into at the airport, so we had to use a rental van to get home. And so we're all piled into the rental van, and it was, I don't know, some 1990s Caravan, and they had 3 bench seats, and so they put the full bench seat in the middle and had the double bench seat in the back, and that's where David and I got stuck with all the luggage. I should mention that I used to get car sick a lot, so being put in the back seat was not a good idea. And we were physically trapped by the seat in front of us and all of our family's luggage. I don't remember exactly what I was doing to make David laugh, but I had him rolling. I think I might have been pretending like I was going to be sick. Anyhow, he was laughing so hard. We had just had lunch at Carl's Jr. and he was laughing. He laughed so hard and he was gasping for air so much that he threw up. Not only did he throw up, he projectile vomited in the middle of a laugh on my youngest sister Bethany in a rental car. My dad had to clean up all that semi-digested Western bacon cheeseburger. We missed that. David has always had a love for our family. After we both went off to college, we never got to spend as much time together as I think either of us desired. He stayed in Southern California pursuing his career in law, and I moved to Oregon to marry my wife, Annie. After nearly 14 years of living in Oregon with my wife, we decided to move to Alaska, which is where we live now. We sold our house in 5 days. I got a job building custom aluminum boats, and we put a new offer on a house in Homer, all within a week. And everything looked like it was going to work out perfectly. About 2 weeks later, I received a phone call from our mortgage broker informing me that the bank wouldn't sign off on my loan because in their eyes I was making a career change. My wife Annie and I, we were devastated. We didn't know what to do. We had plenty of money for a good down payment on the house. I had a job, but it didn't seem like enough to cover the bank's risk. And so I decided to call my brother. And through my tears, I told him what was going on. And in less than a second, he said, "Give me that information, I'll co-sign with you." That's what a brother does. That's who David was. A brother is the one who, when everyone else in the world turns against you, they turn toward you, stand with you, and encourage you. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to encourage you. In light of these circumstances, turn to the ones you love and let them know. Let them know with your words. Let them know with your actions. Don't wait ever. It's always the right moment to let someone know that you love and care for them. I have a deep faith in Jesus Christ. And to be honest, He's the only reason that I can stand up here and speak to you today. Without the hope that I have in Him, in my community of friends and other believers, I would be completely lost in grief of losing my brother. And if you'd like to talk to me about that privately, I would love to talk to you. So let me encourage you again. Reach out to your friends and family. Grow deep in relationship with people. It doesn't have to be a church. There's no restraint on where your community is or what it looks like. We need each other. We need positive, encouraging people in our lives who know and see us exactly as we are, which is scary. It's very scary at times. It's frightening to let someone see your weakness, your flaws. However, it's also how we grow. Please honor David's memory in this way, that you let your love shine through all of those around you. I'd like to read a couple passages of Scripture for you as well. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. May the Lord bless you and protect you. The Lord make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up His countenance to you and give you peace. Lord, give us peace. Thank you.
David, his wife Maria, me, my wife Jen, we all go out together. We go out to dinner, or pretty much anywhere that our firms had free tickets. We go to random classical concerts at the Hollywood Bowl or the Greek. We'd go to baseball games, even though David had no interest in baseball. We even showed up to an event with tickets that were outdated and the event was canceled. And those were Cleat Fusion tickets, by the way. But it didn't matter. We found the nearest bar, and we had a good time because it was all about us all hanging out together. And as you heard from Mark, one of the benefits or the highlights of those times together were laughing. It was making David laugh. He seemed so stoic and serious that my wife and I always enjoyed making him laugh. Because he was so brilliant, you felt if you could make him laugh, that meant something good about you. And if you were lucky, and if you said something really funny, it would turn into this uncontrollable, infectious giggle that would start, stop, and then start again. And what made him laugh was always so random. You never knew what it was that would crack him up. So it was always fun to try and do that. Never made him throw up, and that's probably a good thing. Probably why we were still friends. Over the years, as the years passed, and when David and Maria relocated to Orange County, we became closer. Look back at our text messages, and David would seamlessly transition from serious conversations about the law, about life, to jokes. I learned over the years that David loved dad jokes and dog jokes. Dog jokes being videos or memes of dogs doing funny things. I also learned that he loved his family. I was never to interrupt date night with Maria, and David was so extremely proud of his children. He would send me funny pictures of him and Luke on a hiking trip or on vacation. He would send me pictures of art made by Olivia, which was truly amazing. When I think about David, what I remember most is that our friendship shouldn't have worked. I'm a competitive person. I was jealous of David. Who wouldn't be? He was smarter, he was taller. As you see in all the pictures, he had this enviable smile. Everybody liked David. He was working on high-profile cases at the forefront of our industry. There was no competing with David. He was on another level. And if you ask anyone here, I expect they would include at least two things in what they said about him. He was brilliant and he was nice. David had so many amazing qualities that, to me, are a reflection of his upbringing, the influence of his parents, his brother, his sisters, the family that he spent most of his time with, Maria, Luke, and Olivia. The most important quality that David had, he was genuine. That's why our friendship worked. That's why I valued our friendship. There was never any ulterior motive. There was never any agenda. There was never any ask. Above all else, he was a true friend. He couldn't care about what I was doing professionally unless I cared, unless I wanted to share it with him. And I'm sure he was with that with all of you. He was with you to be your friend, and that was it. And it's so rare to be so intelligent as he was and still be so humble and to maintain all those amazing qualities. David was the person I would text on a moment's notice to grab a beer. He's the person I would call with for advice. No matter how busy he was, he would always take my call. He would take the time to help me work through difficult issues on cases that he wasn't involved in. And because he was so brilliant, because the practice of law was so natural to him, he was always able to give me such great advice. David was also so self-assured. This year, David and I went to the Equal Pay Day event put on by the Orange County Women's Lawyer Association. And you might expect there weren't very many men at this event. There's probably 3 or 4, including David. And to commemorate this event, they would have a group photo of all the attendees. Well, I was too self-conscious to be in the photo, but not David. David's in the photo. Not only is he in the photo, not only is he the only man in the photo, but he's front and center, right in the middle, smiling, and it's actually one of the photos we've included in the program. It's on the back. So that's how I want to remember David. You know, the good times, him smiling ear to ear, that enviable smile, that true friendship. And so, well, this is an unbelievable tragedy, and his friendship for me is irreplaceable. I'm going to count myself as honored to have known him, cherish the time that I spent with him, and I will miss him.
I'm getting to that age where I need to change glasses. I'm Marty Barish. I had the privilege of being David Guess's partner, law partner, for many years before my career took a turn and I entered public service. Many years ago, like 2,500 years ago, a very celebrated Athenian statesman gave a speech to honor the soldiers of Athens. And he observed that as human beings, what we leave behind, what's really important, is not what is engraved on stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others. As I begin, I want to address myself to Maria and Luke and Olivia. And I want to tell you how incredibly sorry I am, and we all are, for your loss. You should and you will remember David as your husband and your dad. Your memories are those of your experiences as a family. Those are the memories that are woven inextricably into your lives. They are and should be what's most important to you. What I'm going to share for the next few minutes are other memories, my own memories and memories of others who knew your husband and your dad outside of your family. And while these may not be a part of your personal experience, I hope they provide you some measure of solace and pride that your husband and your dad was deeply admired, loved, and appreciated by so many people, that his memory is woven into our lives as well. First, so many of us who worked with David remember him as brilliant. There's no surprise, you've heard that word now several times, because he really was brilliant and hardworking and an ethical lawyer. I had the privilege of knowing and working with him since 2007 when he started at the firm. In fact, earlier than that, because David, who ultimately became a partner at our firm, started working at our firm during the summer. In fact, he was the first summer associate, the first law student that worked at our firm that later became a partner in the firm. David had an enormous appetite for taking on the most difficult work, making sense out of our morass of legal and business problems and developing a strategy to advance his clients' interests. In fact, the bigger and more complex the challenge, the better. David was a perfectionist in his work and a master of detail, but remarkably, he managed to do these things and to produce outstanding work under extreme time pressure, a talent that I have always and continue to envy. Colleagues recall that you could bring David a problem on a Friday afternoon, and by Monday morning he had thoroughly researched it, solved the problem, and drafted pages and pages of sharp, beautifully written legal analysis to support his position. He was a hard worker. He was the living example of the professional motto, whatever it takes to get the job done. And this was not limited to matters for which he was responsible. David's work family at KTBS remembers him as a colleague who was never too busy to help with a problem in a case that was not his own. Sound familiar? And who would, without your having to ask, come back to you hours later with reams of relevant research on a problem that you thought had no solution. We remember David for his generosity in that way. We also remember him for his kindness, his decency, his ability to bear the stresses of law practice gracefully and with a wry sense of humor. I honestly do not recall a time when David raised his voice, slammed his desk, lost his temper. There were certainly ups and downs in our work, and many frustrations, but David kept an even keel. For all these reasons, it was a pleasure to work with him as a colleague, and for these reasons, he was genuinely liked and admired by so many people. Over the last several weeks, David's professional friends repeatedly have reminded me of his laughs. And interesting, we've already heard some about his laughs. I, in sort of sorting out my thoughts today, concluded there were at least two kinds of laughs. You've already heard about them both. But at the risk of going over old ground, I want to tell you more. I say laughs because there really were two kinds. First, David had this boisterous, infectious, full-bodied laugh. He took delight in the silly, ironic, and comical moments in our work. And when he did, he really let loose. You could hear him down the hall. But there was a second laugh, not so loud. It was kind of an impish giggle, a mischievous laugh, together with a special twinkle in his eye, which, at least at work, was reserved for those moments when the bad guys were hoisted on their petard and got their just desserts. David was a kind and gentle soul, as many people have articulated over the last several weeks. There was not a mean bone in his body. But he was a partisan. He was a legal warrior. He was loyal to his clients, loyal to his fellow warriors, and his cause. And he took delight in the victories that he and they were part of. He was also a jokester. Several of his KTDS family members remember the time when David meticulously filled the office of one of our colleagues with hundreds of plastic cups full of water. And each of them meticulously filled halfway. Our colleague returned to the office to find that his office was, well, uninhabitable. Water cups on his desk, water cups on his credenza, water cups on his floor, water cups on the windows, water cups on every square centimeter of his office. It was a beautiful and funny practical joke. But in addition to his humor, we remember David for his strong sense of justice and morality. As a law clerk to my colleague Maureen Ty, he is remembered in the San Fernando Valley Division of our bankruptcy court as the master detective who spotted and unraveled a complex foreclosure scam involving hundreds of cases and affecting hundreds of people's lives. Judge Ty remembers that David was outraged by the abuse and that he channeled his outrage into meticulously piecing together what was going on and who was responsible. His work led to an unprecedented en banc proceeding in the San Fernando Valley, in which the three judges presided and under which they substantively consolidated dozens of bankruptcy cases in an effort to remedy the fraud. And that same work ultimately resulted in the successful criminal prosecution of the 5 individuals responsible for the scam. We also remember David as a mentor to junior lawyers. And by mentor, I don't simply mean the person that gives the junior lawyer the assignment and says, go figure it out. He was a real mentor. He took an interest in the development of younger lawyers because he viewed it as his responsibility to support their development. One of his mentees recently recalled that David taught her a lot. He was, in her words, 100% there for you. She explained that he had an endless reservoir of patience for the 1,000,001 questions that she would ask about their work together, and that he genuinely wanted to see her succeed and develop as a lawyer. Similar to the experience that many of my colleagues have recalled, she said that he was generous in his time with her in cases that were not his cases with her. On one occasion, due to an unfortunate series of events, she was thrown into the figurative deep end on a case with which David had no prior involvement. He dove in with her, not to rescue her and not to take over the case, but to provide her the moral support and the guidance that she sought to help her work her way through that challenge. Not surprisingly, when this younger lawyer took over one of David's matters after he left KTBS, he spent hours with her after he had left the firm, answering questions and providing support. That is the David Guest that we remember. We also remember David as a leader in our legal community. Around managers, California Bankruptcy Court, the LA Bankruptcy Court, the Orange County Bankruptcy Court, the American Bankruptcy Institute, just to name some of them. He was a leader in all of these organizations. It wasn't enough for David that he achieved personal success. David was committed to giving back to the professional community that had given him so much. And I think he took some particular pride in it, because as a younger lawyer, the experience of being at one of these events was daunting. You don't know anybody. But he made it his mission to be a leader and to support younger lawyers and to demonstrate to them the importance of our professional community and the importance of each of us as professionals to one another. And of course, David was a mediator because, well, all those things I mentioned were good enough. Finally, for so many of us, we remember David as a friend. His kindness and his generosity were not limited to his professional work. We each have our own memories in this regard. We've heard some of them, we're going to hear some more. For me, many of those details have drifted away. It's been 15 years that I have known and been friends with David. But I remember distinctly sharing all sorts of triumphs and challenges with him, and always feeling that I had his support. And I certainly hope that he felt he had mine. One thing is absolutely clear. He loved his family, first and foremost. He was crazy about Maria and crazy about his kids. He was a doting father, and he took immense pride in his children. Not a conversation we had went by without him sharing some adventure he had taken with his family or some achievement of his kids. Work was fine, and there were joyful moments at work, and there was humor at work, but the real joy in his life was his family. That's what kept him going during the less than fun parts of our work. I'm grateful for David's friendship and his example. And I wish him rest in peace.
Hi everyone, I'm Caroline Jane, a shareholder at Buckhalter. I want to start by thanking Maria and the Guest family for giving us all this opportunity to honor and remember David today. It was my honor and privilege to help plan this event so that we could all gather and share our memories of David. I met David in the fall of 2004 when he was an extern for the Honorable Thomas Donovan, who's here today, who would go on to become one of David's great mentors and close friends. During his externship, the legend of David Guest quickly spread amongst the law clerks. Rumor had it that Judge Donovan said David had written the best piece of writing that he had ever read. Coming from a seasoned and highly respected bankruptcy judge, this statement really meant something. Then, as David applied for clerkships and his law school transcripts circulated, the legend grew even more. One law clerk called David's grades elementary school grades. He had A+ in several difficult courses. Despite his legendary status, David was always humble, quietly confident, and kind. As time went on, David and I followed a similar career trajectory. In 2007, David completed a clerkship with Judge Maureen Tai, another great mentor and friend to David. I completed my clerkship with the Honorable Richard Knighter, and we both started our private sector legal careers at law firms in Century City. We had lunch together often. I remember sitting in Chipotle with David when he gave me some of the best advice I'd ever gotten. He said simply, "Caroline, you know you don't have to work with crazy people." As was typical of David, even the simplest observations were incredibly insightful and wise. I remember how overjoyed I was about 4 years ago when I got a call from David that he and his family were moving to Orange County. It was after that move that David truly became a close friend, confidant, and the number one person I would call to bounce ideas off of. You can hear some common themes here. David had a truly brilliant legal mind, but at the same time was so generous of his time and his talents. After David told me that he'd begun talking to Buchalter, I blurted out excitedly, "If you go, I'll go." I knew this was the opportunity of a lifetime to practice with David. I will forever mourn the fact that we never got to practice together at Buchalter for even one day. The things I miss and will miss about David are too many to count. There was a childlike innocence to David that was incredibly endearing. David loved to send dad jokes and articles from The Onion. In fact, he followed an Instagram page called Dad Jokes. As you've heard before, he doted on his kids. He often sent photos and videos of them. He was extremely proud of Olivia's artwork and Luke's uninhibited wardrobe choices. I can still hear his voice and the quick clip of his diction. I'll always remember the way he would say things quickly and nonchalantly, like, "I'm at Vegas at a shooting range," or "I just got an offer at Buchalter and accepted." David was a man of few words, but his words were always meaningful. There were so many things to love about David, and you've heard this before, but my favorite was the uncontrollable giggling to the point where he couldn't get the words out to finish his thought. I'll also miss the spontaneous text messages. "Let's get drinks right now. Let's go to Heritage Barbecue for lunch tomorrow. No excuses." I will always treasure my lunches with David, who understood the need to get 2 orders of shaky beef at our favorite new restaurant, Little Sister. One of my favorite photos of David is of him at Little Sister, happily posing while sipping a glamonade, which is essentially a sugary, carbonated beverage served in a wine glass garnished with a pink flower. David would accuse me of cheating on him and Bobby when I went there without them. And as a side note, I just want to say I absolutely take credit for introducing David to Bobby at CVF, but I digress. One of the great romances of our time. One of my other favorite memories of David is just a random day when we had lunch again at Little Sister. We decided to get dessert afterwards, and found a new cookie place that just opened. The cookies cost like $10, but they were served warm and gooey and delicious. We sat by a fountain eating our cookies, and he smiled and just said quietly, "Best day ever." I know that even now I have yet to grasp the enormity of the loss that David's passing has left in my life. The fact that I'm speaking about David at a celebration of his life rather than at his investiture for a judgeship or a Lifetime Achievement Award is both surreal and unfathomable. David, I hope that you're at peace now and that you're enjoying shaky beef, a lemonade, and warm cookies, and having the best day ever. At this time,
David's father. I've known him all his life. This is his sister, Michelle, right here. He had another sister, Bethany, who couldn't be with us tonight. She's ill and didn't make the trip down. Thank you for arranging this, and thank you for taking time to be here. We didn't get to hear a lot about David's professional life because he never really talked to us about it. There was a confidence about his work that he honored. He wouldn't tell us what, he would give us kind of a vague description of the cases, but it never revealed who it was for, how it was going, or what was going to happen. Life can change very fast in unpredictable ways. 5 weeks ago today, our family was shaken to its very foundation. Ironically, I was seated as a juror on a criminal trial in Oregon. And it was the end of the day, Wednesday the 8th, and we had just delivered the guilty verdict to the judge. And I was excited about coming home from that trial and calling David to talk to him about the trial. I sent a text to my wife, Mary, who can't be here because she's sick too, to let her know that I was heading home. I got a reply to the text that read, "We have a family issue, you need to come home. Are you on the way?" My response, yes. She wrote back, "I don't want to discuss on the iPhone." I was very suspicious of that. First of all, family situation, we have a family issue, and then discussing the iPhone. We don't use iPhones, we use Samsung. So I was suspicious who was writing this text, and I didn't think it was Mary, so I'm thinking, well, maybe something's happened to her, I don't know what's going on. So all the way I'm driving home for the 20-minute drive home, all kinds of imaginations going on, but nothing would rise to what actually happened. Upon arriving home, I learned David was missing with some very concerning details about the circumstances. So Mary and I went online and booked the very first flight we could get down to North Carolina. We used to live here before we moved up to Oregon. We were frustrated, we were hopeful, we were desperate for information. So we got here, before that, we were hopeful for information. David had that quirky sense of humor. We're thinking, well, maybe just he's playing some really sick joke on us and he's going to show up. He was just being goofy. Mary and I wanted answers, so we started making phone calls. I started calling the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. She called the Orange County Sheriff's Department. I was redirected to the CHP. I talked to them. They said, we've got no information on you. We don't even have a case on it. And Mary got hold of somebody at the Orange County Sheriff's Department who said, hey, we know something about that. I need to put you in touch with somebody. So she got hold to talk to somebody who said, as soon as we find out where your son's at, we'll let you know. We're looking for him. We're actively searching for him right now. Our hopes to the fears turned to devastation late Thursday night when 3 Orange County Sheriff's officers showed up at Maria's house to confirm that David had been found and that he had taken his own life. We had no indication, as you, that David would do anything like this, and wish sincerely that he would have reached out to anyone to talk to them about the anguish that he was holding inside. My wife Mary said, David came into this world too soon, came into this world too early, and he left us too soon. Some things that you may not have known about David. David was our blessing baby. My wife and I were married. We were high school. We got married straight out of high school. I had just finished technical college, got my 2-year degree in technology, and we got married. And for 5 years, we wanted a child, and we couldn't have one. So at the end of the 5 years, circumstances changed, and she got pregnant with David, and we were so happy. We were so glad we were going to have a child, and we didn't know what it was going to be. This is 1980. Ultrasounds were pretty rare. We were anticipating it was going to be great, whether it was a boy or a girl. And we were signed up to go through the Lamaze classes. The week that we were signed up for the Lamaze classes, Mary went into labor, and David was born 12 weeks premature. He weighed 3 pounds, 10 ounces at birth. The preemies generally lose weight after they're born, so his weight dropped down to 3 pounds, 9 ounces. He was so small that we couldn't hold him. He was in an incubator and an IV in his head because there were no other veins big enough to give him an IV to feed him and give him liquids. But eventually he grew and thrived, and after about 2 weeks we could hold him. And I could put his head on the hollow of my hand, and his legs went right to bed. That's how long he was. He grew, went through a few, issues in the neonatal ICU, but he did come through it okay. We got to take him home after 39 days. As a boy, David was neat, he was organized, and he was low maintenance. We loved him. Unlike his brother, he was a normal boy. David kept his room clean. He was a bit of a minimalist. He didn't have a lot of extravagant things. If he didn't want something or didn't like it, if we bought him a gift and he didn't want it, he didn't keep it. He gave it away, he got rid of it. He knew what he liked and he had what he wanted. From the very youngest age, he liked to debate and argue. he would argue in a way which was like no children, where he was screaming for a fit. He would have a rational reason why he wanted what he wanted, and it was better for us to do what he wanted than what we wanted to do for him. Didn't care for sports at all. I gave him football when he was like 2 or 3 years old, and he looked at it, said, nah. We signed him up for soccer, youth soccer. He stood in the middle of the field and watched all the other kids chase the ball, go up and down the field. And he goes, Dad, why are they doing that? He had no interest in sports. But he would sit down with me and watch football, baseball, whatever, to be with me. Last year, he invited us down. He had some free airline mile tickets to come down, and he took me to a car show. Which he knows I love cars. I think he likes cars, but he likes different kinds of cars than I like. David was an academic superstar. That's part of being low maintenance. We never had to ask him about homework. We never had to tell him to do homework. He did his homework, and he did more than his homework. It was almost embarrassing when he was in elementary school, because the school that our kids went to, public school, had academic achievements, like maybe once a quarter. And David got them every time. He would get an academic excellence award, an academic achievement award, a principal's award, and it was almost like embarrassing because all the other presidents were like, we don't have a chance. He was in the athletic decathlon in high school with Tribuca Hills High School. He took all high school AP classes, every one he could possibly take in preparation for going to college, and graduated, disappointingly, 9th in his high school graduating class of 2,000 some students. He really wanted to be the valedictorian. Very talented. He played guitar, played the piano. David set goals for himself and he drove to those goals. UCLA was one of his goals. When he graduated high school, he was offered a full-ride scholarship to UC Santa Barbara. And he said, Dad, I want to go there as a party school. I want to go to UCLA. I said, I promised it. I said, I told you I would pay for your college tuition. You want to go to UCLA, we'll send you to UCLA. I'm still paying for UCLA. He did go to UCLA, and he respected and honored the expense that my wife Mary and I were making to send him to UCLA. So he worked through the summer semesters and finished UCLA in 3 years with a double major in history and Eastern
Slavic
languages. And just as a side note, talk about funny things. We went out to a restaurant. He and I went out to a restaurant one time. And we're sitting there having a meal, and all of a sudden he gets that little snicker on his face. You know, something's going on in his head. And he's kind of laughing a little bit. He's trying to keep it constrained. So I said, what are you laughing about? He goes, I'm listening to the people at the next table who are speaking Russian, and she's really angry at him because he's cheating on her. So David wanted to go to UCLA. When he graduated from high school, he studied like crazy for the LSAT. He was nervous about it, and when he went to take it, he was nervous and drank too much water, and he had to actually leave the LSAT before he finished the exam. So he was devastated, but he pulled up his pants and went to work for 1 year as an insurance claim adjuster, studied for another year for the LSAT, and took it to get a higher score, because the first year he got turned down for pretty much every school that he wanted to go to. The second year he put in some safety schools and he wound up getting accepted at University of Illinois Law School. So he went to the first year of his law school at University of Illinois, got on law review there, and worked really, really hard, and then transferred back to UCLA so he could finish and get his degree from UCLA. As he was going through college at UCLA, he was making plans to get married. He met our beloved Maria, and blessed us with Luke and Olivia. David's a great father. He's got high moral values, strong work ethic, and we do take credit for that, because that's what we ingrain in all of our kids. And they're all great. We love them all equally. We love all their spouses the same. Couple of quick stories. So we did little practical jokes around the house sometimes. And one Christmas season, we had a poinsettia plant. Everybody has poinsettia plants. We had a poinsettia plant. And my wife either read or come up with the idea of making a fake poinsettia plant. So she potted up chocolate pudding, and she ground up Oreo cookies and put on top of it and made it look like dirt. And she stuck fake poinsettia plants in that plant. Set it in the middle of the table, and then when we finished dinner, she says, who wants dessert? She reaches over and grabs a spoon and starts digging the dirt, the fake dirt, out of the poinsettia plant. And I was in on it, so I ate it. The other kids are all going, freaking out. So we decided a couple months later when my mom and dad came out to visit, because they always came out after Christmas because the airfares were cheaper from Indiana to California, that we would do that to my parents. And David was in on it. He was going to be the person who was going to eat the fake dirt. So my wife got all set up, and then David said, nah, I don't want to do it. He backed down on it. So my wife said, well, that's fine. You don't have to do it. So she put the real plant back out on the table. And we finished up dinner, and David's like, got that little smirky thing on his face. And he goes, who wants dessert? And he grabs his spoon and he goes over and digs out of the real poinsettia plant and takes a big mouthful of it. Spits it all over the place. David took shop in, we had a couple years in Utah, and David took a shop class over there, and he made furniture. We have a bookcase in our living room that he made. He also made a paper towel holder, this big round, you could put paper towel on. So one day my wife gets a phone call. We need you to come to the hospital, your son has cut off his finger. So apparently when he was running the table saw I got just a little bit too close to the blade, and he took off about 1/4 inch off the end of his finger. Crazy stuff. So the Sunday after we knew that David had passed, Mary, my wife, and I, we went to Calvary Chapel, San Clemente. We've been a Christian family since David was born. So we went to Calvary Chapel looking for some hope and consolation. In the midst of this sermon, something happened to me which never happens to me. I had a vision. It's like what I was seeing in the church disappeared and a vision appeared to me. And that vision was beautiful. It was a beautiful vision of two angels catching David under his arms as he was falling. A peace immediately came over me as I now knew that David was being cared for by God. It was so unusual afterwards. I told my wife Mary about it. I said, well, I had this vision of David being caught by angels. She goes, I had the same vision. And she said, and Michelle had the same vision. Which was just affirmation, confirmation that it wasn't just me having hallucinations. The Bible says if you make the Lord your refuge, if you make the Most High your shelter, He will order His angels to protect you wherever you go. They will hold you up on their hands so you won't hurt your foot on the stone. When David was young, up until he went off to college, he professed his belief in Jesus. He wrote letters to his grandparents telling them about Jesus and how they should repent. little evangelizing. We had him baptized at least 5 times. First time he was a baby, so that really didn't count. But he knew the Bible thoroughly. He read it many times. And you couldn't argue with him about it. He knew, and he could debate it with you. In fact, he debated theology with our pastor over Salt Lake City, and he would invite Mormons to our house in Utah to argue over various religious viewpoints. The Bible also tells us if you openly declare that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him dead, you will be saved. We believe that we will be reunited with David in heaven. This is a hope that sustains us through this difficult time. We do appreciate you taking some of your precious time to be here with us today to honor and remember David. We love hearing your stories and look forward to hearing more. Thank you very much.
I'm Sasha. I work with David at KTBS. The first time I met David was when he interviewed me for a summer associate position at KTBS. I thought the interview was going well, but then towards the end, he noticed that my name was Russian, and he asked me if I spoke any Russian. And I sort of, massaged the truth a little, and I said, oh yeah, I speak a little Russian with my family. Unbeknownst to me, David is fluent in Russian, and immediately dives into very fast, very excellent Russian. And I'm just completely so, even if I had a chance of understanding him in another context, so thrown off by the fact that this guy is speaking Russian to me, I don't even know what I said back. But it definitely wasn't a response to whatever he said. And I didn't get the job. But I wound out at KTBS anyways. And when I met him a second time in my interview at KTBS later in my life, I said, I think we met before at when you interviewed me for a summer associate job. And he said, oh yeah, you didn't speak Russian. And then I got all flummoxed again, but I think I recovered a little better the second time. But David was a really remarkably smart person and so generous. One of the stories that Judge Barish said is from my experience with him. He was such a resource to me, cases that he transitioned to me, that he spent hours with me on long after he left KTBS. And I was apologizing, I'm so sorry to bother you, and this isn't your problem anymore, but I just want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. And he was just like, I don't even know what you're apologizing for. Of course I want to talk to you about this. I want you to be successful. I want you to get it right. And he just was interested in the work, but also interested in his relationships with other people. And it was really, really nice to have him.
I am Mike Tushin. I don't have much to add, but that won't stop me. I met David when he interviewed with the firm to be a summer associate. At the time, I had heard of his work with the judge, and then ultimately he externed as well. And I've never had two judges call and say that this was the finest person they had ever worked with, both in terms of the quality of his work and his moral character. David and I worked together for many years. We traveled together. He was a wonderful person to travel with. Very, very low maintenance, easy to get along with, liked lots of different foods, a great sense of humor, as you've heard. And then when he left the firm and moved to Orange County, in large part so the kids could go to better schools, we stayed in touch. He always kept me updated, always surprised me. It was, he made decisions very, very quickly and announced them very quickly as if they were natural and you'd been talking about them for years and years. I personally, I was in Italy when I got the tragic news and was just floored because I had spoken to David shortly before. We were scheduled to have lunch and he got COVID, and then we rescheduled lunch, and I just don't understand it. He was so proud of his kids and Olivia's graduation, and so happy about Buckhalter and what that meant for him. So candidly, I'm just struggling with it enormously. I love David, a wonderful human being, a wonderful friend, a wonderful partner. I don't know that I'll ever understand why I'm angry with him, but I love him and very much hope that he's at peace.
I'm Jeff Garfinkel. I'm a shareholder at Buckhalter. When David moved down to Orange County at his two prior firms, I knew of his background. I told him that he would be a natural fit at my law firm and with our practice. I finally, at the beginning of April, we were at the Financial Lawyers Conference, and again I encouraged him, knowing what we were doing, the amazing stuff for a particular client that I had. And I said, David, I don't care about your practice. Come work with us. We have plenty of work to keep you busy in really interesting national cases. I told him, this is a situation where 1 + 1 = 3. When he joined us in May, unfortunately I had COVID, and then he got COVID, so we didn't have much time together. But for this client, he was vetted. This client, before he joined our firm, looked at his credentials. He actually had a call with their in-house counsel, and they said to me, you need to hire him. And we did. Within the first week, David was already working on a very, very significant matter for some other lawyers, and the quality of his work was impeccable. And the client noted it. Many in this community, we see a number of faces come out of our law firm, and we're proud of that. To the Guest family, David and you will always be part of our family. I only wish I got to spend more time with David. I only wish on the day that he took his life that I had seen more of the signals. I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Candace Krashani, and I had the opportunity of working with David at the bankruptcy court when he was still in law school, and I was excited about meeting David before he even interviewed because his application package had a letter of reference from another law clerk we had worked with before he came an extern for Judge Donovan. I was Judge Donovan's law clerk at the time, and that's how I got to work with David. But the letter of recommendation was amazing. They said, you basically said, you must hire this guy. He's brilliant. He'll make your life easier. You must hire him. So before we even met him, I'm like, he's hired. I love this guy already. And then we met him, and of course he was friendly and personable and articulate, and we were able to work with him, and it was a privilege. He was smart, he was funny, he was gracious, and I happened to be one of the law clerks that helped circulate his resume to the other law clerks because he was brilliant, and I thought everybody needs, they should definitely be able to work with this guy in the court because he's great. So it's a huge loss to the legal community, but as a person, even after he was done clerking at any lawyer event, he was always the person that would come up to you and say, "Hi Candy, how are you doing?" And when he said, "How are you doing?" he really meant, "How are you doing?" So he's very kind, and it's a privilege to know him. This is a huge loss to the person. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Veronica Rocha. I met David through TNA. Yes, you hear he's an incredible person. He absolutely was an incredible person. When I met him, it was after the conferences and social setting. There was quite a few of us. And both of us were trying something new for the first time. And that was we were being schooled on the etiquette of cigar smoking. And we were looking at each other saying, not sure what to do here. And we figured it out. And sometime between the competition of who can have the longest ash and showing all his pictures of his children that were just amazing, yes, you could see the love that he had for his family. We became friends, sealed friendship. It was a short friendship, too short, David. But that day he had downloaded, I don't like sports, I love my family, I like my museums and art, look at my children, I love my Luke who wears his beautiful outfits, very colorful. Look at my Olivia, all her artwork, he would start showing me all his artwork. And between sharing pictures of our respective families, said this guy is so genuine. But not once did he ever say, I'm a lawyer, I'm an accomplished lawyer, I'm very highly, that was who he was. Just so humble and genuine. And I know all of us are going to miss him greatly.
nice some of you came up and spoke and gave me the courage to come up. And sitting back there next to David, talking to him, should I go up and say something? I kind of really want to. Remember you, and get that little laugh and say, man, come on. Don't go up. And since his passing, just remembering a lot of times in professional organizations, I apologize. I know David mostly through Financial Lawyers Conference and TMA, and he and I shared, I think, a kind of a passion for organizations and leadership and doing things in organizations, planning events and hosting events, and just being there. And so many of the things, Bobby, that you said, just, I've been talking to people, we've all been sure talking to each other, just so many of the observations are just so similar. We all loved his laugh. And Bobby, when you stood up here and said, I can't tell you how many people I said, one of the things I wrote about David Guest is if I could make him smile, I could make him laugh, because he was so intelligent and he was so, he wasn't dry, he was just genuine all the time. But if you could make him laugh, and it was almost like you wanted to make him laugh, you wanted to make him smile because it made you feel good. And when he did, it was like everything just melted away. And I don't know how to explain it. I wish that I could be more like David in that way, the genuineness that he had, the honesty that he seemed to have with himself and with life, and nature. And Michael, when you just spoke, we're all feeling the same things. This just doesn't make any sense, because of everybody's talking about what David. It doesn't make any sense. I loved him. He would be missed.
Hi, so some of y'all know me. David and I both worked for the same judge. We both clerked for Judge Time. And in the few months before his passing, we were working on both two different events honoring our judge. And at the passing of the gavel, he told a story in front of our community about how Judge Ty helped him as a mentor when his daughter came out to him. And I remember hitting him up after that event because my daughter had recently come out to me. And in David's way, he gave me guidance with humor and videos, joke videos about, what it's like to be a parent to, gay kids. And I just know that he was very open about all of my questions and helping me and giving me guidance about the way to parent positively. And he was very generous by offering to continue to be a resource for me. And I'm really gonna miss his guidance, given with that dash of humor that David always did. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we still have the space. So please stay. Let's all continue to